I'm getting paid, I'm getting experience. It's something amazing that I could talk about and add to my resume, and it's an opportunity to travel. So I was like, sign me up.
Down, yeah. I've been feeling so.
Hey y'all, so welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the summer fellowship program that I did for 6 weeks during my last summer off between M1 and M2 year. So let's get started. I participated in the National Medical Fellowship's Primary Care Leadership Program, my beautiful little board. I'm so grateful and so blessed because a lot of summer plans got canceled for a lot of people, not only travel plans, but research opportunities or fellowship opportunities, service opportunities, different things that people were working so hard to line up during the summer. So I'm very grateful and very happy that my particular program still went through, even though it had to be a little bit adjusted and it had to go virtual, but nonetheless, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to participate in it. So as you know, I switched up my scene for the vlog today because I was kind of getting bored of the other one. My dad, by the way, and these are some pictures of when I went to Italy. Anyways, I applied early decision for the program. The way I found out about the program was the financial advisor at my school. She sends out different scholarships or fellowships that she knows about. For those interested, go ahead and apply kind of thing. Also, I knew I wanted to do something, productive during the summer. So I was also researching different programs on my own, and I applied to several programs. This was just one of them and the one I decided to go through with. So I applied early decision, which the deadline was December 15th to apply for that, but the regular deadline for applying was January 17th. But obviously, if you apply early decision for anything, you probably have a better chance at getting it. So the program is basically to allow students to experience primary care practice in a community health center. Usually these community health centers are government funded, and primarily they serve the underserved community and those in the most need. So obviously these are the people that have lower income or don't have health insurance, things of that nature. So I've always been very interested in primary care, and it's definitely one of the specialties I'm looking into. So I figured, why not do this program to learn more about primary care and to see if it's a good fit for me. Also, they provide a $5,000 stipend for those that participated in the program. And it was originally going to be in Oakland, California. So I was like, okay, perfect. I'm getting paid, I'm getting experience. It's something amazing that I could talk about and add to my resume. And it's an opportunity to travel. So I was like, sign me up. Several people can participate in this program. It's not just for medical students, but a lot of us were medical students from all around the United States. It's also open to graduate level nursing students. It's also open to PA students. So when you're applying, that's the basis of the questions that they ask you, like why you're interested in primary care, what do you know about it, kind of thing. The site partners that they had this year were located in Boston, the gateway cities of Massachusetts, Chicago, Illinois, LA, and California, Oakland, California, and Miami, Florida. And when you're applying, they ask you to rank the locations of where you want to be placed. So I put Oakland, California first, then I put LA, and then I put Miami. Let me give you a rundown of my reasoning behind this. So I guess you could emulate similar things when you're applying to your summer programs. So I put Oakland, California first because I had secure housing with one of my sorority sisters in Oakland. So I was like, if I end up in Oakland, I have housing guaranteed and I won't have to spend a lot of money on that. Then I put LA because I was like, okay, maybe I will have to get my own housing in LA, but it's still in a new place, in a different city. And I've been to LA and I like different parts of LA. So I was like, it would be cool to be in California for the summer for a couple weeks. So that's why I put LA second. And then I put Miami third because I was like, I live in Miami. I can definitely save on housing in Miami, but I did want to just like branch out and like experience a new city for 6 weeks. So that's why I put that. I ended up getting LA first initially, but then they switched me to Oakland because they knew Oakland was my first choice. So I was really grateful for that and like them taking the time to give me my first choice. I love the site that I was placed at. So I was placed at La Clínica de la Raza in Oakland, California, which is a community health center, and they have several sites within the Bay Area. And everybody there was absolutely amazing. The site coordinator was phenomenal. Like, she was on top of everything. We talked to her like basically every day. She organized our week-to-week activities. We were able to contact her through text at all times whenever we needed. If something was missing, she was literally on top of it. I am just, at a loss of words of how amazing our site coordinator was. And then every single physician or leader in La Clínica de la Raza was amazing. And you can tell everybody there is just like so gung-ho about the mission of La Clínica, and they work so together, and it's just like, I could imagine like the most ideal place to work at and just like, start out as a physician. That would be it. And it was kind of funny because I kept telling them like, I need to come back. Like, I wish our program didn't went virtual because I want to see the clinic and meet everybody in person. Like, I really liked it a lot, and I could only imagine how much more amazing it would actually be in person. So that was one thing. Obviously, COVID-19 pandemic has caused a lot of things to change and shift and new norms and blah, blah, blah. So our program was originally going to be in person, and I was going to be living in California for 6 weeks. That obviously changed, but the program went virtual, and they still gave us all of the stipend money, so that was amazing. We started June 15th, and we ended July 24th, so literally 6 weeks. The stipend was $5,000. They gave us $4,000 in the beginning, and then they're supposed to give us the last $1,000 once they check off that all of our deliverables were completed. And the money was originally to cover your food, your housing, and your travel. I stayed at home, and I didn't have to pay for housing, and my parents feed me. And I don't have to travel. Like, I didn't have to catch a flight. So I saved all that money for a rainy day, racking up a lot of loans. So that'll help offset some of my expenses this year. And I'm really grateful for that. But let me just dive into like what the program entails. So there's 3 components to the program. The first is leadership development. The second is clinical experience. And the third was a service project, or like a capstone project, as they would call it. Our site coordinator organized meetings for us to meet the CEO, the CFO, everybody in charge of emergency operations, different directors, different providers, people in leadership that play different roles in the clinic that you don't see it on a day-to-day as a physician. And so they're very behind the scenes, but what was cool was that we got to see how everything functions in the middle of a pandemic. For example, their school sites were completely closed. They just had to make a lot of changes due to COVID-19. And so we were able to sit in on meetings where every leader was in the meeting, and they would like hash out things that they're doing for the pandemic, discuss their needs, discuss issues that have been going on in the community, things that they can improve. So feedback that they have been getting from patients, kind of keeping track of how many of their patients are coming in with COVID, what their testing is like, where they're getting funding from, just so many different things. So we were able to literally have one-on-one conversations, for example, with the CEO and the CFO, which is awesome. Another thing I really liked was a lot of their leadership at La Clínica was women. So these very hardcore, strong women, just so empowered. And it was funny because when we would get on the calls, it was just like all women on the call, and we're like, yes, like what a time to be alive. So I really liked that. They had so much information to offer as leaders, and kind of like told us like what their journey was like to the position they got. And a lot of themes that I noticed was kind of like they never you know, one day was like, oh, I'm gonna work at La Clinica. It was kind of like did this educational program, and my friend thought that I would be a really good fit at this place, and there just happened to be an opening, so she made a call and then got me in, and I just happened to really like it, and the people and the connections that I made have been amazing, so I decided to stay here, or I landed there. And it's very like, I never really planned this to happen. It just kind of worked out this way, and I'm very happy it did. I've noticed that occur in a lot of the journeys of some of the greatest leaders that I've met, especially in medicine. It's never like they had this on their like vision board. It was just kind of like one door opened after the next, and they were just willing to walk through that door. So that's a big thing about like being a leader. Like, you just, a lot of things are very spontaneous, and you just have to be like very on your toes and have the courage to take on those roles when they present themselves, because not everything is, you know, in an application process. It's just kind of like opportunities that unfold. But anyways, that was the first component of the program. The second component of the program was clinical exposure. So since the program went virtual and a lot of things were conducted through telehealth for the safety of patients and providers, but also for continuity of care, because, you know, a lot of the sites had to end up closing, but obviously people still need healthcare and still need medical attention. So everything transitioned to telehealth. Another thing during this whole pandemic switching over to telehealth was that La Clinica had also switched electronic health records. So they switched to Epic, and so not only were they navigating transitioning to telehealth, but they were navigating transitioning to a whole new electronic health medical record. And if you know anything about electronic medical records, it's a pain. So they were dealing with a lot, to be honest. I had to do like a short version of the Epic training, and I honestly was just like up to here with it. Like, it was just a lot. It was very cool to kind of like see how it works. I used a little bit of Epic when I was at USF volunteering, so I wasn't like completely blind, but it could be really confusing. A lot of the providers transitioned to telehealth, and a lot of the clinical exposure that I got was either through Zoom, but mostly on the phone. It was 2 to 3 times per week and about 5 hours every day that I did it. So it would be anywhere between 10 to 15 hours of clinical experience weekly. What worked in my favor was that I'm bilingual. All of the providers spoke English, but then most of them spoke Spanish as well. And since they have a lot of patients that are minorities, a lot of their patients speak different languages, so they use the interpreters a lot there. Like, I remember on my first call, the first call was English, the second call was Spanish, the third call was Cantonese, the fourth call was Mandarin, and then the fifth call was another language that I had never heard of before, and it's like only certain percentage of people in the world speak this language. So it was a lot. Within a day, they would literally have like 6 different languages being spoken through these clinical encounters. So that was very eye-opening to me. On the West Coast, a lot of the primary care physicians also practice prenatal care, and I really liked that. I thought that was cool, just because OBGYN is also like one of my big interests. So the idea of just doing both on the regular seems really cool. A lot of the patients that were being seen for prenatal care had COVID-19. So that was another interesting thing to learn about, kind of like what their experiences were like, how the providers were handling it, how that was being handled through telehealth, because a lot of their visits typically tend to be in person. Any patient that needed to be seen in person, they can easily go to the emergency clinic, or they would get an appointment within a few days. Since it was on the phone and telehealth and not always like the video feature was being used, I could do it from anywhere. So if I wanted to be at the beach listening to phone calls, I could have, or like if I was cooking dinner, I would just put it on speaker and I would be able to listen onto the phone calls and just multitask. So that was cool too. That was a plus of things being virtual, I guess you could say. There was a lot of multi-generational houses, so if one person in the house got COVID, it was like red flags, because there was like 6 people living together. There was one particular clinical encounter that really stuck out to me. a child losing a lot of hair. She was basically balding, and the mother was really concerned. And this was a phone call with a pediatrician, and I was listening onto the phone call. Part of the encounter, the mother put the child on the phone and she was able to talk to the pediatrician. And so the pediatrician kind of went through like the whole history. First of all, I had never shadowed a pediatrician, and I had never been in like witnessed a clinical encounter where the pediatrician gets the child alone and is able to ask them questions. And this is something that we learned in medical school, kind of like how navigating how you can get the parent out of the room, or you're trying to get the child alone so that you can ask them questions and kind of get a fuller picture without them worrying that somebody's listening to them or them not being able to tell the whole truth or leaving things out. So this was literally on the phone, and the pediatrician, asked her like, are you in the room by yourself? And she said, no, I can. And so she went to a different room where her mom wasn't there, and she kind of went through the questions and like asking her how she is. And the little girl was talking. She said that she was like really worried because her hair was falling out. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe it's alopecia. It wasn't, it was just stress. But her father was being detained by ICE in one of those centers, and he had been there for 3 months. He got taken away at the start of the pandemic, and she hadn't seen him since, and they had to get a lawyer. And because the father was the primary breadwinner of the household, they were going through a lot of financial issues. So not only dealing with the dad being detained by ICE in these detention centers or whatever, and we already know how like those conditions are, but they were also dealing with the fact that he brings in the money. So they were running low on money. So then they had to rent out a room in their house. The little girl had to like stay with her mom, and they had to rent out her room to random people. The question came across of like, there's random men in the household, like obviously that raises some concerns. So the pediatrician also asked her things along the lines of like, who's living with you guys, and what has your interaction been with them? Has anybody done anything that you didn't want to do, or asked you to do anything that you didn't want to do? And thank God, she said no to all those things, and she's safe, and she feels safe, and she's just dealing with a lot of stress. And they had to hire an immigration lawyer to help her dad, and hopefully like he doesn't get deported or anything like that. So that was a very like humbling and eye-opening experience, because it's like I feel like I've been very blessed throughout this whole pandemic, and I'll complain here and there obviously about like first world things. Meanwhile, other people are dealing with literally like real life issues, like keeping a roof over their head, putting food on the table, getting medical care, being separated from their family. So that was a very humbling experience for me. We were also able to follow along with the electronic health record to see, everything, the notes that the physician was putting in. I really do wish it was in person, because I do think it would be much more rewarding. But nonetheless, telehealth is growing, so I feel like it was a learning experience in itself, and it was still very valuable to see how able to navigate this whole thing like in the middle of a pandemic. The third component was the service project, and it varies by the location that you're placed at. So if you have a site that has a very HIV heavy community, you're probably going to be doing a project based around HIV. If you're in a clinic that deals with a lot of homelessness, you're probably going to be doing a project that revolves around serving the homeless community. So in my particular community, we were given like several options. I decided to go with doing telehealth in general. I basically created a survey that was delivered to the providers, and we had like almost 50 responses, and we looked at everything from like their experience with telehealth prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, and kind of like what their experience was like, what was working for them, what difficulties they had, did they find video helpful, what their levels of stress was, how many patients they were seeing, if they were seeing patients, how many of them required interpreters, like all those things. So it was really cool to see all that data come together and then provide recommendations to La Clinica. So for example, one of the issues that they were having was connection. Like the audio or the visuals weren't the best at times, just because either their connection was bad or they felt like the bandwidth didn't support it. That's one way that they could improve the telehealth experience. Another thing was they were having long wait times in general for the interpreters, but more in particular for mom interpreters. I'm not even 100% sure what language that is, but they said that they had very limited interpreters for that language, and so they would wait really, really long for them. And so another recommendation was, for them to get more interpreters for that particular language. I was also able to do a poster presentation for everybody else in the program, and then I had to do a 10 to 15 page report, which at the beginning I was like, whoa, that's a lot. But once I started analyzing the data that I gathered, it was so easy. My report ended up being 25 pages, including all the diagrams from the Google form and stuff like that. It was a little difficult to balance with my master's just because they were both ending around the same time. So while I was studying for my finals, I had to do this 15-page report. So that was a little stressful, but overall it was very doable. The poster presentation was literally 90 seconds because we all had to present. So that was easy breezy. I basically said my name, the title of my poster, and what I did, and my biggest takeaway. We had to watch 2 webinars and provide a 300-word reflection. And then we had to read 3 articles and provide a 300-word reflection for each of those. And then we just had a weekly survey where we kind of described our highlight, put in how many hours we did, what we gained, and if we had any issues. I think I got really lucky with my site because they were just amazing leaders, and they were amazing clinicians, and I was just so grateful for the experience. Every single provider that I spoke to was just so cool and so chill, and really loved their job and loved what they do, and they were so passionate about sharing their experience with me. So it was honestly an amazing program, and I give it a 10 out of 10, and I really want to go to La Clínica in person because it seems like an amazing place. And that was only virtually that I saw it or connected with it. So I can only imagine what it's like in person. And yeah, that's everything about my fellowship. I thought it was so worth it for 6 weeks, $5,000, huge, amazing experience. I'll link it in the description of the video. And thank you all for tagging along, for all your questions and your curiosity, and allowing me to share this with you in this space. If you have any more questions about summer opportunities, definitely feel free to ask. But there's so many amazing fellowships and scholarships out there, or research opportunities. So when you're deciding what to do in your summer off, take that into account. I know some people do TA, some people just travel, some people just relax, some people study old material, and it's all up to you. And don't compare yourself to other people. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Focus on what you want to do and what's going to help you for the career that you're trying to go into. I obviously have no idea what I want to go into, but primary care was at the top of my list. So that's why I decided to do PCLP. Primary care is still at the top of my list. So we'll see. We'll see how things play out. And I'm just grateful for the experience. I'm grateful for everybody I met and every mentor that poured into me. And thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to comment, and reach out if you have any questions. I will see you another time, and God bless.
I've been feeling so down, yeah. Can you tell me why? I'm down.